Hello friends and welcome back to House of Props. The original Lord of the Rings trilogy were the films that kick-started my desire to be a prop maker. So today I'm going to be making this Uruk-Hai General Helmet. It was designed for the Two Towers, but it was never used in the film. However, Weta Collections did make up a little scale model that they released. I finally had the opportunity to sit down and make something from my favorite series, which I'm thrilled about. I hope that I can make more coming in the future. So let's get started. Let's start with the face piece and the side pieces. These are 6mm foam and they are attached with contact cement. I align the face area and work my way back along the seam. The center face panel might be a little long for these side panels, but that's no big deal. It just means there's a little extra and it'll be covered up with more foam as we go along. If you haven't already done so, now would be a great time to subscribe to this channel and click that notification bell so you can be alerted when new projects are released. Once the sides were attached, the helmet looked a little boxy, so I heated up the foam near the seams with my heat gun and then proceeded to curve the dome a little by pressing on the interior and exterior to create the desired shape and hold it in place for a few seconds while the foam cooled back down to room temperature. Before I attached this piece onto the helmet, I used my rotary tool to ever so slightly round off the edges. Then I centered the piece onto the rear of the helmet and glue into place. The piece is stretched slightly on each side to align with the rear of the ear openings. The triangular points on either end stick off the bottom of the helmet base. Then this crescent-shaped piece was centered onto the previous piece and glued along the bottom edge. Next, the jaw pieces are attached so they overhang the bottom edge of the helmet by about a ½ inch and protrude forward about 3 inches. To attach the crest, I begin by beveling the rear of the piece where it will rest on the helmet. It is then centered on the top in line with the rear of the ear openings and then glued into place. You may have noticed I use a ballpoint pen to make myself some alignment marks. I do this to make sure that both sides of the helmet are symmetrical. On the rear of the crest and the helmet, I attach 3 of these 4mm foam pieces. One is centered in the middle, and the other 2 are attached on either side where the crest meets the dome. Next, I use a 1/4 inch hole punch and cut a bunch of 4mm foam circles that will be used as the rivets. I then place these across the helmet using images of the Weta collection helmet model for the exact placement. Then using this tip on my rotary tool, I round off the rivets by pressing the end of the drum straight onto the 4mm foam rivet. This rounds off the edges and makes the rivet more dome shape instead of a cylinder. After all the rivets have been sanded down, I take some foam clay and begin filling in the seams. I take a small piece of the clay and press it in and along the seam. Then I dip my finger in some water and smooth out the foam. By using the water and your finger, you're able to get a really smooth finish and blend out your edges nicely. After the foam dried, I added a little battle damage to my helmet by using a coarse sanding drum on the rotary tool. Then it was time to start prepping for painting. I began by heat sealing the entire piece. This can be a little tricky with white foam because you can't see the surface change so easily as you could with gray or black foam. Then I apply some quick seal along the seams just in case any of the foam clay shrank too much as it was drying. I apply it with a palette knife and use the knife to scrape off a lot of the excess, and then come in with a finger that I've dipped in water to help blend. Make sure to really smooth the edges of the quick seal or you may end up with ridges that highlight the seam areas instead of hiding it. When the quick seal has dried, I coat the helmet with Plasti Dip. We'll start with one coat before we add any texturing. While the Plasti was drying, I went looking for a texture I could use to get that industrial metal look. I saw these stone textures that would work and give an amazing finish, but I didn't like the price. I mean, come on, $17 for one can? Forget it, I'll find an alternative. Luckily, I had some of the ceiling texture left over from a previous project, so I decided to use this. You could also use sand or sawdust to achieve the exact same effect. All you have to do is mix the texture with paint and then apply the mixture to the dry Plasti Dip surface. When this texture layer dries, coat the helmet with a second layer of Plasti Dip. When the second layer of Plasti Dip had cured, I painted the entire helmet with a charcoal gray acrylic. This will help with the next paint steps and make sure the texture is really secure. When the charcoal gray is dry, I then dry brush metallic silver across the entire surface. Once the silver is dry, I make a very thin black wash and brush this across the surface. Then I take a soft cloth and dab up a lot of the wash. This wash will help tone back the metallic aspects of the silver and start to give you more of an iron steel look. Where pieces meet, I leave some excess of this black wash just to help accentuate these crevices. Next, I take some burnt sienna, thin it with some water, and brush this across the rivets. The edges of the paint can be blended with a little extra water. Then some straight burnt sienna paint can be used to help pop the edges of the rivets. When I paint blood, I like to work with several shades or tones of red. That way I can achieve a more dimensional paint job than if I used only one straight red color. I start with the darkest red and begin the markings on each side of the crest. I don't want a solid finish, so I dab the brush sporadically, leaving some of the metallic surface showing through. Then I repeat the process with the mid-tone red, but I don't use as much paint as I did with the first layer. And finally, I hit some small spots with the lightest shade. When the layers have dried, I dab some nail polish clear top coat in the spots where the lightest shade of red was placed. By adding this clear coat, it will help these spots look like fresh, wet blood and will dry, leaving a glossy surface so that it will always look like fresh, wet blood. Next, I used some pastel to sketch in the layout for the white hand of Saruman before I began dry pouncing the area with a white acrylic. The hand's fingers wrap over the top of the crest and extend down the rear about an inch. As the final paint step, I take some raw umber and lightly apply some to the rivets. This will help give the rust more dimension and not appear so flat. And there you have it, an Uruk-Hai General Helmet, completely out of EVA foam, very simple paint job, quick and easy, just in time for Halloween. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends and family, and don't forget to subscribe to House of Props for more content. And remember, if you are building any of my builds or using any of my templates, feel free and tag me at House of Props on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, because I would really like to see your fantastic work. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.